called.
Uh-huh.
And he called his name Israel.
So now God changed Jacob's name from Jacob to Israel. This is the first place you find the word Israel in the Bible. And from here on, you find Israel on just about every page in the Bible. You understand what I'm telling you? So now if anybody going to claim to be teaching you the Bible, they got to be talking about it. It is not possible to teach this book and not talk about Israel. Anybody, I go to church all the time. Well, did we ever talk about Israel? No, they'll never talk about Israel when you ain't being taught the Bible.
That's right.
The last place you find the word Israel at is in the 22nd chapter of Revelation, which is the last chapter in the last book in the Bible.
Yes, sir.
So now what part of it are you being taught if they're not talking about Israel? Now, God changed Jacob's name from Jacob to Israel. Let's go to Genesis chapter 49 and begin reading at verse 1. Genesis 49 and verse 1. You need to be taught the Bible. That's why everybody is messed up. And another reason everybody is messed up too is almost nobody understands who Israel is. And if you don't get Israel right, you can't get the Bible right.
That's right.
I look at them all the time, all these supposedly biblical scholars supposed to be teaching you about prophecy, and they mess up everything because they done messed up Israel. Israel, they got Israel because Israel got scattered in the bondage. We're going to show you that in this lesson. Then Israel, according to the Bible, will be scattered into bondage until the second coming of the Lord. But they got Israel going back in 1948. Therefore, if you done messed that up, how you going to get end-time prophecy right? You cannot get it right.
That's right.
So now, again, Jacob's name was taken from Jacob to Israel. Let's go to Genesis 49 and begin reading at verse 1. Go ahead and read.
And Jacob called unto his sons and said.
Now Jacob had 12 sons, and he called unto them, and this is what he said. Go ahead and read.
Gather yourselves together, that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days.
Go ahead.
Gather yourselves together, and hear, ye sons of Jacob, and hearken unto Israel your father.
So now we know Jacob's name was changed from Jacob to Israel. So hearken unto Israel your father. Skip down to verse 28. We're going to come right to the point. Go ahead and read.
And these are the 12 tribes of Israel.
Now Israel came out of 12 tribes, 12 sons, 12 tribes. Go ahead and read on.
And this is it that their father spake unto them.
So now, what nation is it that came out of Jacob? It is the Israelites. Now the Lord said 2 different nations and 2 different manner of people, he said, didn't it? One was going to be the Israelites, the other was going to be the Edomites. I'm going to show you something here. I wish I had a better picture, but I'm going to show it to you anyway. Let me show you this one first. That's how an Israelite look. A real Israelite. Like me. If you can't see this, you can see me, can't you? Well, that's how a real Israelite look. You might not be able to see this too well, but this is how Edomite look, like this. You understand what I'm saying? Like that. 2 different nations and 2 different manner of people. You understand what I'm telling you? He don't look nothing like me, does he? Next time I'm going to have a better picture of it, real big, so make sure you can see it. But the Lord meant exactly what he said, 2 different nations and 2 different manner of people. Now, let's go to Exodus chapter 1, and we'll begin reading at verse 6. Exodus 1, and we'll pick it up at verse 6. 1 and 6. Show you what the Lord said about these Israelites, because these Israelites, they wound up down in Egypt. Initially, they didn't go down there in bondage. One of Jacob's son, Joseph, he was sold down into Egypt by his brothers, and he rose up to become a ruler down there in Egypt. Then there was a famine all over the land, and the Lord had showed Joseph about this famine. So Joseph had prepared for it. So everybody that wanted food, they had to go down into Egypt to get food. They didn't even recognize Jacob. They thought he was Egyptian. They didn't even recognize their own brother. You understand what I'm saying? Because he was sitting there as one of the rulers of Egypt, and he was dressed like the Egyptians, so they assumed that he was an Egyptian. They was all the same color, but because he was a ruler in Egypt and dressed like an Egyptian, they thought he was an Egyptian. They went back and told their daddy that he was an Egyptian. Finally, Joseph revealed himself unto them. So now, they was down there in Egypt, and that was during the lifetime of the initial 12 sons. Then generations passed. Then there rose up a Pharaoh that didn't know Joseph. And he began to afflict the Israelites and made them to serve in hard bondage. Start reading at verse 6, 1 and 6. Go ahead and read.
And Joseph died, and all his brethren, and all that generation. And the children of Israel were fruitful, increased abundantly, and multiplied, and waxed exceeding mighty.
And they increased abundantly, and they waxed increased mightily. You know, Israel always did have a lot of babies. That's another way you know who. The man that called himself Israel, he don't produce too many babies, you understand? But what about us? We produce them all the time, don't we? And not nothing like we used to. We've decided we're not going to produce as many in these later generations. But there was a time when Israel had babies. Now Israel, they began to multiply down there in Egypt. Go ahead and read on.
And the land was filled with them. Now there arose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph.
So now there has risen up a new king over Egypt that didn't know Joseph. You know, because the Israelites, they did well, and they were looked up on during the Pharaoh's reign that was around when Joseph was around. Then that generation died off. Then there rose up a Pharaoh that didn't know Joseph, and this is what he began to do with the Israelites. Go ahead and read on.
And he said unto his people, Behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we.
Go ahead.
Come on, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply. And it come to pass that, when there falleth out any war, they join also unto our enemies and fight against us. And so get them up out of the land.
Go ahead.
Therefore they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burden. And they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramses. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew.
Go ahead.
And they were grieved because of the children of Israel. And the Egyptians made the children of Israel to serve with rigor. And they made their lives bitter with hard bondage, in mortar, and in brick, and in all manner of service in the field. All their service wherein they made them serve was with rigor.
Now that is good. Now I'm just showing you what the Egyptians did to the Israelites. You know how they made them to serve in hard bondage and all of that. And they had them down there making brick, didn't they? Now I want you to read this caption here that's written under this picture that was taken from Egyptian archive. You know, Egyptians, they had a thing where they would always bury things in tombs. You know, they left a lot of valuable information in tombs, and some of it wasn't discovered until like around the 1920s. We talking about about 80 years ago now. You understand what I'm saying? And these are some of the things that they found in these tombs here. I want you to read the caption that is written under this picture here. Go ahead and read it.
Brick making captives.
Brick making. Wasn't the Israelites making brick in Egypt?
Yes, sir.
Didn't we just read that from the Bible? Now, brick making captives. Go ahead and read on.
Depicted on a wall painting from the tomb of Rechamar at Thebes, 1533 to 1450 BC.
In other words, around the time of the Exodus, around the time that we just read about here in Exodus, the 1st chapter. Go ahead and read on.
Bearded foreigners under the supervision of an Egyptian with
bearded foreigners, it said. You know why bearded foreigners? Because God had a law in Israel that they were not supposed to say.
Yes, sir.
But I even read one caption in another book where it said the Egyptians, they always say, but the Israelites didn't.
That's right.
Because they had a law. That's why they didn't shave. Go ahead and read on.
Bearded foreigners under the supervision of an Egyptian with stick far right.
Now, bearded foreigners under the supervision of an Egyptian far right. You know, this is a smaller picture of this. I don't see the difference in these people, not as far as color go anyway. Go ahead and read.
Gathered water and worked mud and straw together into mold. At top left, a worker lifts a mold from a sun-dried brick.
Go ahead.
At far right, a worker carries cured bricks to building site. Israelite worker was making bricks in Egypt at the time this was painted.
Israelite workers, it said, was making bricks. All these are dark-skinned people that we're looking at here, you all. And I'm going to show you how the Pharaoh looked